All right, guys, we have got something super rare here now. This is a Sega Gremlin Space Odyssey, 1981. This is, it's from, gosh, the most classic year of games. Yet it's extremely rare. I mean, I've only seen two of them in my life, and I own both of those. I've never even seen it anywhere else. I'm sure there's others out there, but boy, it's not a common game. And fortunately, this one is fully working and in pretty good shape, considering this is not exactly what you would call Sega's most beloved cabinet. This, I believe, is the first game that Sega used for this style cabinet. And I say that just because it's slightly different than all the others. I mean, they used this cabinet for several years. It was all their color vector games were in it. And they had that Converticab series, like 005 and what else? Up and Down. There were a whole bunch of games that were in that Converticab series. And they were all in something that looks similar to this cabinet, but not identical. This thing is really unique. It's almost like this was a prototype where they were trying to figure out a new cabinet design, but they learned some lessons with this because it is just, there's so many odd things about this cabinet compared with those others. For example, look at the way this front door hinges down. It's got these interesting like cabinet type hinges here. That's different than the way the Zaxxon style cab is. Now the control panel is about the same, with the same little spring-loaded pins that go into holes in the side of the cabinet, and it's got the same little connector here to disconnect it. This uses that cage system. I don't know if that's called, is that called System 80? I think it is. I don't know. But yeah, it's a similar cage to what the vector games used, like Zektor and Eliminator and TAC-SCAN and all those. Similar cage, but obviously different boards than would be in those vector games. That's kind of the standard Sega power supply from the era. It looks very similar to the one that was in their earlier games like Carnival and Head On and things like that, Invinco, Blasto. So that may be the same power supply they used in a bunch of games. Plus, it also has this separate switcher. It's interesting. I think this power supply just puts out all the odd voltages, like the plus 12, minus 12, stuff like that. And then they use a switcher for the plus 5. It's got the same little reset button and credit and volume control that they've used on most of their games. But yeah, the way this monitor is put in here, first there's this outer bezel that's like a wooden box that has a plexi like notched into it. Then there's the paper bezel. Then there's another one of these wooden boxes behind that. And then there's a wooden frame. I don't want to take it out because it's just a pain, especially with one hand to get it back in. But yeah, and this little wooden box here actually fits into the top with these little tiny holes and these little pegs that slide up into the holes there. Also, I know I'm giving you way more information than you really care about, but it took me a while to figure out how do you get behind the marquee, because this one wasn't lighting up. I wanted to get it to light up. And you can see there's no screws on the bottom or on the top. There's nothing on the side. It's like, I was actually to the point where I thought, they must have just built this sucker, put the marquee in, and glued it all together and just assumed no one would ever need to get behind there. But I was wrong. There is a way to get in there. When you remove these two wooden boxes here, then it reveals a little mechanism up here on each side with a little circle with a slide in it, and you slide it out like this, and it pulls in a pin, and then this thing hinges up. It's so strange. This panel is like put in with pegs here, and the whole thing hinges up, which then allows the marquee to drop down and hinge out a little, and then you pull the marquee out. and then you can get to it. And I did get the marquee light working just with a new bulb and starter. So I never have seen anything like that. It is so convoluted and so much work what they had to do to make that work that way. Let's see, the back is pretty similar. Oh, this back door is in here so tight. Actually, I don't think there is any difference. Oh, well, yeah, the only interesting thing about this back door is how it's held in here. Gosh, is it really worth me pulling that out? Let me set this phone down and see if I can pull this out. This back door is just really snug. In fact, it's so snug that I don't even really have the lock. I don't even have the cam on the lock because it's just not necessary. Doggone it. But I want to show you because I've never seen this on any other game. The way they hold the bottom of this back door in place. All right, here we go. Come on. This back door is in perfect shape. Okay. Look at this. It's got these little slits cut with these little wooden discs in the slits, which then line up with slits that are in this piece of wood. This piece, look, this little wedge, does it even have a name on it? No. It's like a little football-sized piece of wood that goes in this little notch, and then this notch, or the little football then slides into this other notch. Now, while I get this off, I'll let you look at the monitor. This is a G07 monitor. I have to confess, I did not rebuild this. I didn't cap kit it, and it is a Virgin. I could have, but the thing is, it has a perfect picture, and I kind of have this. I've been reading a lot of people who badmouth people who rebuild monitors that don't need it. Oops, and here I am putting the back door on backwards. So I'm not going to rebuild monitors. Well, I'm not going to make that commitment, but I didn't rebuild this one because it had a perfect picture. I mean, it's just a G07 for heaven's sake. It's easy to, you can cap kit it if it ever needs it. But look at that picture. It's just gorgeous. Oh, and did you notice there's no screen burn on this thing? This game, well, it came from a collection. Yeah, look at that. That's a perfect G07 tube. This came from an operator who only operated for a few years and only in the summers, and then he put everything into storage, and it never saw the light of day again, and it never got plugged in again. So that's why there's just absolutely no burn on that monitor. Now let me start a game so you can see that everything's working, including the sound. I need to get a tripod so that I can play with both hands. See, here you go. Controls working. It's actually a pretty cool game. It goes through all kinds of different modes. It kind of reminds me of Vanguard, where it just goes, after you get through this particular enemy, it takes you to a new enemy and then another new enemy, changes perspective so that you're flying this way. It takes you to a 3D perspective where you're flying over a 3D terrain and avoiding black holes. Really, a lot of depth to it, to be honest. So, a real good addition to your collection, especially if you like rare games or if you like Sega games, Sega Gremlin. I mean, they are one of the top names of the classic era. The cabinet is pretty good. It's a little bit rough on the bottom, but not bad at all. I got about 4 or 5 more cabinets like this out of the same place, and this is probably the most solid bottom of any of them. I had to actually put new bases on most of them because the bases just had crumbled. These cabinets were not, well, you know, I don't need to tell you. These were not the best cabinets ever made. But this one is about in as good a original condition as you can get. The bottom door, I did find a key that kind of worked in it, and then I locked it up, and now the key doesn't work anymore. There's nothing in there, though. There were no coin boxes or coin buckets. It's just empty and clean down there. Luckily, the overlay's in pretty good shape. It is cracked here along the edge, but other than that, it's in really nice shape, which is good because I doubt anybody's making Space Odyssey CPOs. Marquee is absolutely perfect. The bezel is perfect. So yeah, this is a grail, I'm sure, for some people. So I think I've said enough. Yeah, it doesn't even say the game name on the back. It's just serial number, part number, and JO, whatever that is. So there you go. Thanks for watching.